If you thought the NDAA was bad, National Defense Authorization Act of last week was bad, if you thought that that was hardcore, the secret arrest of Americans, the end of posse comitatus, military on the streets, the whole world a battlefield, if you thought all the announcements that they want to take your pension funds and put them into government control was bad, if you thought any of this MF global stuff was bad, this new piece of intel that came in today that we researched all day and then put an article out just an hour or so ago on or less, if you think that all of that was crazy, this little piece was a crystallizer, was a real indicator of just how serious things are. And what am I talking about? Well, there it is on screen right there. Exclusive government activating FEMA camps across America, across the United States. And of course, that's quite a headline. We have the emails, we have the internal Halliburton KBR documents, government defense and infrastructure, not for public eyes, restricted info, sent to us by people in government. I'll just leave it at that. And it's got the 5 regions for the FEMA camps, and it talks about barricades of barbed wire and armed guards, and it says that they built the camps and that now they need to get ready to staff them, and that they need to be ready within a 72-hour period for the guards and the people in the canteen with the food and the launderers and just the whole 9 yards. There it is. So
now to a controversial bill resurfacing in Congress. The FEMA camp bill allows the government to run at least 6 military installations when a national emergency is declared. These emergency centers would be run by FEMA under the command of the Secretary of Homeland Security. And a few years ago, a similar bill was presented in Congress, but it didn't go anywhere over concerns that the broad language can lead to sweeping, unchecked government power. Now, another version is back up for debate, and Bob English, a civil liberties activist and blogger, joins us now for more. Welcome there, Mr. English.
Hello.
So it didn't pass the first time around. No. Why was there resistance to it?
Well, a fellow by the name of Lee Rogers began writing about it and raising some alarms, concern over the broad sweeping powers it would give the Department of Homeland Security. And it kind of caught fire and just died.
It just died because people were afraid of what this could lead to. Exactly.
There were concerns that there were parallels to the Japanese internment facilities in World War II that we saw. And for practical purposes, the financial mess was going on, and there were other things to be dealt with at the time.
Okay, so there were concerns over the vague language. It didn't pass. Now there's this new version of the bill. What's changed?
Well, they took out the vague language so that the centers are specifically set up to house, shelter, even educate people for extended periods of time, but they are limited to that specific purpose.
Okay, so of course this legislation is meant to be enacted in the event of an emergency. Right. But what exactly does that mean? What is the definition of emergency, especially when it comes to this legislation? When would it be enacted?
Sure. We have to go back to 1988 to the Stafford Act bill to actually get the definition of emergency. And this covers things like tornadoes, floods, hurricanes, natural disasters. But it also gives the president to declare an emergency to avert a catastrophe, which raises the issue of preemptiveness.
Okay. But this also, this is... the goal here is to mobilize resources to have this plan to prevent a tragedy from happening, but also a reaction to it, right?
Yes, a reaction, and that's where some of the concerns for civil liberties activists comes in, because it's a slippery slope. Once the government has this power and all these centers are set up, and it's at least 6, maybe more, probably more, there is a real potential for the abuse of power here.
Okay, interesting. You know, we have this map that shows how the U.S. would be divided in the event of an emergency, if we can pull that up there. There it is. So this is how the U.S. will be divided into districts. You see 10 of them there. This is according to the National Emergency Center establishment. Can you describe what this map is? What exactly does that mean? I mean, it doesn't really make sense in terms of states as we know them. But what is this classification system?
Sure.
What are the purposes?
It doesn't look like the map that you and I saw in elementary school.
Not at all.
Effectively, the U.S. has been cordoned off into these different districts. And so these new emergency centers will be spread out throughout the United States in most of these eventually. And it gives FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security jurisdiction over what goes on in these places during a time of emergency.
Okay, I want to go into because this act does make some specific examples, some exclusions, set some limitations, I should say. So the National Emergency Center Establishment Act, what it does not do, it does not authorize any federal officer or employee to force an individual to enter a national emergency center or prevent an individual from leaving a national emergency center. So, Bob, it looks to me like there are some safeguards there. If you don't like it, you can leave.
Well, I'd like to think so. And this was actually one of the other things that was changed in this new version of the bill. They added this. But if you read what they're saying, you know, federal officer or federal employee, that doesn't cover members of the military. And since these are going to be installed in decommissioned and existing military bases, you're going to have people from the military there. So I would think they will have people, namely in the military, who would be able to force people to stay there or prevent them from leaving if that is what they want to do.
Now, for civil liberty advocates like yourself and others like you that are worried that this could be a precursor to government overreach, what would satisfy your... What would make you more comfortable with this piece of legislation, I guess? Do you think that the language in it should be clarified, that it's not so vague so that it could be interpreted and abused?
Ideally, it would be withdrawn, but if I were forced to live with it, I would want the restrictions on keeping people in there to extend to the military and, in fact, to anybody, not let the states or even local governments have that ability.
Okay. Bob, so we're talking about emergencies, we're talking about disasters, we're talking about chaotic situations where some order hopefully the goal there is to be established. And, you know, some are going to say desperate times call for desperate measures. So doesn't that ring true for natural disasters and cases like that? What
do desperate people in the government do in those situations? Like I said, I think it's a slippery slope, and we don't really need people in power with these vast sweeping powers to begin with. Unfortunately, there's moral hazard involved here, too, where people really don't take care of themselves anymore, plan for these emergencies when they have the federal government and other governments ready to step in. And we saw what a great job happened in Sandy and in Katrina. So, like I said, moral hazard. All
right, Mr. English, very interesting, and thank you so much for weighing in. That was Bob English, civil liberties activist and blogger.
Thank you.